Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Come on!
There we go. Live from Maganda Beach in Goa, India, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center, New York, Kastuba Das. Welcome to India, everybody. Kastuba's up in Mayapur, up and over. I'm down and south in Goa, here with Miss Mara, who is thoroughly bronze right now.
She's beyond bronze
setting.
now.
She's beyond bronze. She's deep brown Malibu Mara. And we're sipping here watermelon juices. How's Mayapur treating you, Prabhu?
I've also been drinking watermelon juice.
Oh, yeah.
Over here. But it's wonderful. Wonderful over here.
Yeah, loving India. We thought we were going to travel. We're just going to stay put. We have a really nice morning program we've been doing every day.
I called that one, Raghu. I called that one.
You called it. Okay, you're wise. I will say that. So we have a really nice morning program. We have a really nice program, period. Today's Ekadasi, eating super light and just reading Chaitanya Bhagavat and feeling good about life.
Very
planning all the events at the farm for this year, about to make it public. Yeah, and planning all my book stuff I'm doing. By the way, I'm going to make an announcement. I'm doing Generation Records. I'm doing in-store interview Q&A. If you're a New Yorker, New York area, that is April 7th at Generation Records. And also one at Bridge 9 Records in Wesley, Mass. Bridge 9 Records. I just put it on my Instagram. If you want to come do a Q&A, signing, a book signing, stuff like that, I write messages to people. And I'll autograph your book, Kastuba, if you want
Gotta get one. When are you doing that? What was the date on that?
You can't get it. That's Wesley, Mass is the 20th, and August 7th. April 7th, I'm sorry, is Generation Records in New York.
Okay.
Then on the 12th, I'm going to be in Long Beach, California, doing a kirtan storytelling book signing at Yoga 108. Putting that out there for some Californians. And we're just doing a bunch of shows and reunions, and I'll bring books to all of them, and I'm looking forward to it. It's like a whole new version of me I've never stepped into, and I'm sort of excited.
Look at you. What do you mean you never?
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
I never did a book tour.
You did once have a book, but that was
sort of like I did when I was a brahmachari. I did a Q&A what's it called? A Q&A sort of book. Questions and answers book I did with Satyaraj, probably a dialogue book. And we printed them ourselves back before self-publishing was a thing. We made 5,000 copies. We sold out of all of them. It was called In Defense of Reality. And it's out of print, and we won't reprint it. But those are like they became collector's items, especially within the punk and hardcore scene. But Satyaraj was my Vartma Pradakshina guru. He's the one that really turned me on to Bhakti. So I wanted to do it with him. And so, yeah, so it's sort of my second book, but it's sort of my first real book. I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Mara, how you doing? You got any
let's check
informative
in with Mara,
info here?
I do. We got back to recovery group meetings today. The men are meeting at noon and the women meet at 2 p.m. Eastern time today.
We were listening to the Bhakti Recovery podcast today, Mara. It's a great podcast. She has the ability to go very deep, very quick, cut through all the nonsense. Shout out to Jiva G.
Okay.
Are you ready to dive into some nuggets, senor?
I am. Who you got? What you got?
I got some goodies for you. This is from Lao Tzu.
What can you tell me about Lao Tzu, Raghunath?
I don't know. I don't know much about the man.
Well,
I think he was very wise.
He was this is the Wikipedia thing. It says he was a semi-legendary ancient Chinese philosopher. But what I think they mean by that, what I think they mean by semi-legendary is that like he's like, I don't think they're saying he's not quite legendary or like, you know, but I think
didn't quite make legendary status. It's like a B movie or something.
I think they mean that a lot of what is said about him is legend. It's not necessarily true.
Oh,
you know,
that's okay.
Because they mention a little lower down modern scholar, and you know, modern scholarship, who knows what they know. Modern scholarship generally regards his biographical details as invented and his opus a collaboration. You know, to be a scholar, you got to come and say, well, hold it, you know, like you got to tear stuff down to kind of,
well, you know, they say that in even in Vedic thought, right?
Yeah.
One cannot claim to be a sage or something unless they sort of tear down another sage. So it's the same with modern academia.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, so
right, it's talking about the Mahajans, what makes a Mahajan, or no, it talks about the best we do. The best we can do is follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans, the great,
because like who should we follow? There's always a philosopher. They establish some thought, and then another philosopher comes and tears that down and builds the next one up, and it seems to be a constant thing going on. So how do we know what's right, what's wrong? You look, and what is it that you look at the into the heart of the great souls, you know, and follow in their footsteps. That's where you find the truth. And now, as our daily ritual continues, Raghunath is frozen, and he's not here for our Lao Tzu nugget. Hopefully, he'll be back in a minute or so. I'll read a little bit more about Lao Tzu, see if Raghunath comes back. It says Lao Tzu, he's the author of the Tao Te Ching, the foundational text of Taoism, along with the Zhuangzi. Forgive me for mispronouncing that. Lao Tzu is a Chinese honorific, typically translated as the old master. Modern scholarship, again, generally regards his biographical details as invented and his opus as a collaboration. Traditional accounts say that he was born as Li Er in the state of Chu in the 6th century BC during China's spring and autumn period. And he served as the royal archivist for the Zhou court in Wangcheng in modern Luoyang. And he met and impressed Confucius on one occasion and composed the Tao Te Ching in a single session before retiring into the Western wilderness. Okay, so whatever we do know about him, he has an interesting quote here. I'm going to read the quote. Are you ready, people? Here we go. According to Lao Tzu, the key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. I will read that again for you. The key to growth, and you know, in one sense, this doesn't sound too profound, but actually I believe it is, and I'll discuss why. The key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. We might think the key to growth is to develop a skill. We might feel the key to growth is to gain something external, whether it might be wealth or might be fame or it might be whatever it might be. But what I find interesting about this and helpful about this, and what I find in this that kind of runs parallel to our teachings in Bhakti Yoga, is that oh hey, we got Rogo back. Has to unmute.
Sorry about that.
with us?
Got this.
Well,
It's like
I've
old.
come
It's like
to
old
expect
school
it.
India. It's like old school India where the electricity will just go out. Remember the days
Well,
when it just used to go out for 9 hours?
Well, it seems like it does it every day at this time, like
I
exactly this
know.
time.
I know
So
exactly.
maybe we gotta be ready for that.
Move the time. We might have to move the time.
In any case, so I read the nugget, Raghunath, but I'll read again. I was just getting into it. The key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness.
All right. How do you
So-
how do you interpret that?
Yeah, what I was getting into was, it's not what he's saying is it's not anything external. We might think that the key to growth is like to go somewhere, to see something different, to leave where we are, but the way that I'm understanding what he's saying is we can be sitting where we are now. We can be living the same life that we're living now, but we could be seeing it if we're exposed to, and if we absorb and incorporate higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness, then we can see exactly what we're seeing now, but see it from another perspective, or as he's the language that he's using here, a higher dimension. And so then the question becomes, how do I introduce higher dimensions of consciousness into my awareness? Right, that becomes the fundamental question, which I think is a perfect question.
How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it?
Most fundamentally, I would say the way that I attempt to do that in my life is by hearing Bhagavatam and by hearing similar texts. It's the idea that there are it's not because they're ancient that they're valid.
Sure.
But it's because they're valid that they're ancient. In other words, it's because they're valid that they've passed the test of time.
Right.
So many different wisdom traditions have the same wisdom in different packages. Some of them may be expounding on it more detail than others, whatever, but we can find common elements that have passed through the centuries. And so for myself, particularly the text of Vyasadeva and those that are following in his footsteps, texts like Bhagavatam, texts like Bhagavad Gita, texts like Mahabharata, Upanishads.
So
things
my
like
next
this.
question is then, how does it manifest in your life? That's how you get it. But what
Yeah.
do you do with it? So what do you practically do with it that assists you?
Well, the idea is that, I read a quote. I wonder if I could pull it up quick, but
I don't want a
it
quote.
was.
I want you. I want your heart.
Well,
Pour out your
this
heart
is my
to
heart.
me.
This is my heart. But it was actually. I think perhaps later in the day. I'll read this verse now, but I think it may relate to something else that we'll read later in the show today. This is Bhagavad Gita, 1331. Chapter 13, text 31.
1331. Okay.
Yeah, when a sensible person ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and they see how beings are expanded everywhere, they attain to the Brahman conception. They attain to the spiritual level of thought, or the spiritual level of awareness, or the higher dimension of the Brahman conception. And in reading that, there's a word here, anupashyati. Pashyati means to see. Anupashyati, I believe that anu means it has, it could mean several things, but it has an element in it, that the prefix has an element that relates to following, right? Anupashyati. So Prabhupada translates that as one tries to see through authority. In other words, there are texts that are spoken by speakers who were seeing with a higher dimension of consciousness. And if we hear from them, we can try to see through their vision, and develop a higher level of awareness. So how does it work in my life? Yeah, I read these and then you reflect on them. And that's the quote that I wanted to find. It was actually in a commentary to this. I might be able to pull it up quick. But basically it was saying is that it was describing what philosophers call in Sanskrit manana, which means reflection. That what's that? Why are you doing the Jeopardy thing? Are you frozen again? Okay, I think you are. Maybe I can. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it up, but the idea with manana is that first there's shravana. You hear from someone that's speaking from a higher level, a higher dimension, and then you reflect on it. Then as you go through your day, you reflect on it. As you pass through your challenges, you reflect on it, and gradually you are gifted. You develop the ability to see the same thing that you saw yesterday or last year. You saw it one way. You're seeing the same exact thing, but you're seeing it through a new set of eyes. Anupasthiti, yeah, right? And you're able to relate to whatever your circumstances are in a different way, and that's the key to growth, right? So I mean that, in a general way, I would say like that. You have some thoughts on that, Roga?
You know what? Not as lucid as your thoughts.
You've been drinking too much watermelon juice over there? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm a little intoxicated on watermelon juice.
All right.
What do you say we just dive into the Bhagavatam?
Yeah, I think this will come up again before long.
Let's see.
Let's hit it.
See. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayat. Before we start in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Nara Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana-tamarandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 4, Text 37.
Yeah, we were just beginning this commentary, so we thought we'd revisit it, right? But why don't you go ahead and read the verse again? This is the one that had the Krishna graha, the planetary influence, the influence of Krishna that's like an influential planet.
I've been really thinking about this for a long time, this Krishna graha. It's got because the planets have a pull on us,
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like when there's a full moon or a new moon, the moon phase has a pull on the body. And of course, if you're dominated by a particular planet due to your astrological chart, sometimes people are in these really high places. These people are very, very ultra successful. Their planets are so powerful. And sometimes people have planets that are like, man, this guy is going to take his life. So the planets, the way they lined up, and we're responsible because it's our karma being manifest in front of our eyes. But the planets give us some insight to them, and they have a weighty pull, either lifting us higher or lifting us lower. And for those who are devotees, we're adding the Krishna graha. The Krishna planet has such a strong effect on our consciousness that it's pulling us in every direction. And we were saying, when you add Krishna to your life, this was one of the themes yesterday was everything becomes auspicious, even the most tragic things or the things that seem horrible, what material world would claim like unfortunate and horrible, they become quite wonderful. And so that Krishna graha is a blessing to have that in our life, and the devotees of Krishna and the aspiring devotees of Krishna. That's our leading planet more than any other astrological reading.
There you go.
Astrological force. Okay, so this is the translation. From the very beginning of his childhood, Prahlad Maharaj was uninterested in childish playthings. Indeed, he gave them up altogether and remained silent and dull, being fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Since his mind was always affected by Krishna consciousness, he could not understand how the world goes on being fully absorbed in the activities of sense gratification. That's sort of like where you and me were at in our punk scene. We're like, why? Why are people doing this?
I think he was a bit more on another level, though.
Well, yes, it was. You don't think I was like a young Prahlad Maharaj?
I don't know. Not sure.
No,
know I
wait.
wasn't.
Well, I think we question what the world is what's going on in the world, and why should we move forward a path that's been laid out for us that we don't see any real success, or we start questioning what success in the material world is. I think that's the dawn of our spiritual life.
The way that I understand his consciousness, though, I get what you're saying, and I agree with that. But I think, like, for instance, later on, we'll hear when he hears people talking about friends and enemies, he's kind of like, I've heard people talk about this thing before, but I never really understood how people could see like that. It's like some kind of deep innocence and purity that made it very difficult for him to understand how people didn't see in the same way that he did.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he was more advanced than us. That's for sure.
Okay.
I'll give him that.
give-
I'll give Prahlad Maharaj that.
Okay.
Us as punk rockers in the Lower East Side and Prahlad Maharaj. I was trying to draw some similarities, but okay. I stand refuted.
No,
Purport.
Yeah, go ahead.
Purport. Prahlad Maharaj is because let's face it, there's a lot of people that were like punks like us in the Lower East Side, and they didn't see the system as a good thing, but they just went in a whole different direction with their rebellion. We rebelled to God, and they rebelled towards some demons. There's demons, Kastuba.
Okay, we're gonna just read the first.
I've been studying up on some very interesting stuff lately. I don't know if there's
careful where you're going.
You know what Bhuta Vidya is? The Buddhists have a whole thing too. It is
this is a squirrel. We're not going down this squirrel hole right now.
It's a good squirrel, man. The Buddhists have this whole thing too. Whole science of mental health goes towards demons. I'm gonna just leave it at that.
Okay.
Google it. It's
I
a
could
real
respond
thing.
to that. I could respond to that. Should I? Would you like me to?
Yeah. You want to tickle my squirrel?
Well, since you started the squirrel, I was, in what I'm writing right now, a lot of it has to do with stages of evolution of consciousness. Right?
Sure.
And the primary model of that evolution that I'm working with is the model from karma to jnana to bhakti, right? That's an evolutionary path. It's there in the macro. It's there in the micro. It's natural. It's beautiful, and love is the highest principle. And part of, and sometimes people, when you express something like that, oh, you're saying bhakti is higher than jnana. Well, that's sectarian thought.
They say you're sectarian.
Yeah, but the point that I'm making is no. This evolution is found. It's universal. It's found in all the different spiritual traditions. For instance, in the Buddhist tradition, I was reading a kind of like an introductory book on Buddhism written by some professor. And generally, when particularly like Western people, when we think of Buddhism, we think of jnana. We think of Buddhism on the platform of jnana. We think it has everything to do with control of the mind, control of the senses, letting go of the things of this world, etc. Those kind of jnanic conceptions, that level of jnanic realization. But what the professor was saying, that when you really get into it, if you go to a place like Tibet or Nepal, and you'll see that primarily the most of the people that are practicing Buddhism are practicing it from the level of karma. And the way that he illustrated that was, he was describing how he was sitting, I think he was in Nepal, maybe Tibet. I think it was in Tibet. And he was sitting with an influential lama in the area, monk. And they were discussing, philosophy on the platform of jnana. But he said then a couple, villagers, a married couple, two villagers came in to see the Lama, and they were, reverential towards him, but also they were upset, fearful. And he said, well, what's the matter? And they explained that there had been all these inauspicious omens in their life, and they were worried about what they had done, what karmic activities they'd done to bring this upon themselves, and so on. And he assured them that they have a peaceful mind, that there's nothing to worry about, and gave them some, what in Sanskrit what they would call prajchitta, gave them some rituals to counter off the negative effects that they were worried, like as you're saying, that there's some demon or something, some inauspicious presence in their life. So there you go.
They do puja, they do mantras to counteract some spirits, some inauspicious things, for sure.
Which
is very
very much karmic
Vedic
level
in so many
of
way
approach.
And there's all these worship of devas too.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into it. Prahlad Maharaj.
Back to ghosts. Okay, back to Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj is the vivid example of a great person absorbed in Krishna consciousness. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said, a fully Krishna conscious person, although situated in this material world, does anything but Krishna anywhere and everywhere.
Interesting.
This is the sign of a Mahabhagavat. This is what we're practicing. The Mahabhagavat sees Krishna everywhere because of his attitude of pure love for Krishna. As confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Valochanena. I worship.
Sadaiva Hridayeshu Valokayanti.
I didn't want to. I wanted to just do the English.
Oh, it's such a
Yam
beautiful
Shama
verse,
Sundar
though.
Achintya Guna Swarupam Govinda Maripurjam Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love.
Pulp.
It's like a salve. A salve. In the old days, you put some like a salve on your eye, or if you have some problems seeing, it's a host oil. It's an oil that hosts herbs. What am I trying to say? Like a carrier. An ointment. Like a carrier oil, a base oil. Yeah, and you rub it on your eyes. So they're saying that oil has to be the salve of love. That's what's keeping us from seeing Krishna face to face. And that's a tall order. It sounds like, well, no, I love you and I love people, but we get challenged a lot. It's very easy to love the people that are similar, that like us, that look up to us. But when there's people that are out there on the other political side, or there are people that aren't behaving how I approve, or people that just don't think I'm cool or validate me, it's hard to love them. And so we're in a constant practice of learning how to love these people who are just, not acting in a way that attracts love.
Well, and I think especially this is saying love for Govinda. And then through that, you develop the kind of
So I'm saying
expansive love that you're discussing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
an exalted devotee.
An exalted devotee, or a Mahatma, right? A great soul who is rarely to be seen, remains fully conscious of Krishna and constantly sees the Lord within the core of his heart. It is sometimes said that when one is influenced by evil stars,
here you go,
like Saturn, right, here we go, Saturn, Rahu, or Ketu, he cannot make advancement in any prospective activity.
Well, you and I are both in our Saturn periods, Raghunath.
Yeah, but we have a very strong Saturn period. It's not an inauspicious Saturn.
Okay.
But it is a time of shedding material things, simplifying.
We got to shed like Gus sheds.
Got to shed. There's a lesson to be learned for my dog. In just the opposite way, Prahlad Maharaj was influenced by Krishna, the supreme planet, and thus he could not think of material world and live without Krishna consciousness. That is the sign of a Mahabhagavat. Even if one is an enemy of Krishna, a Mahabhagavat sees him to be also engaged in in Krishna's service. Another crude example is that everything appears yellow to the jaundiced eye. Similarly, to a Mahabhagavat, everyone but himself appears to be engaged in Krishna's service.
Such a fascinating perspective, and I try to understand it. I don't feel I understand it very well, but I assume that perspective, at least part of that understanding, has to do with a very zoomed out perspective, right? Like even all the activities that, in other words, if we would look at people and judge them and say they're definitely not engaged in Krishna service, but this person, whatever it is that whatever information we're using to come to that conclusion, to the Mahabhagavat, to this devotee, this great devotee, those things must be very insignificant in comparison to other information that they're attuned to, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Sun is setting
Prahlad
here.
Maharaj.
Okay. Hold on a second. Prahlad Maharaj is the approved Mahabhagavat, the supreme devotee. In the previous verse, it is stated that he had natural attachment. The symptoms of such natural attachment for Krishna are described in this verse. Although Prahlad Maharaj was only a boy, he had no interest in playing. As stated in the Bhagavatam, the symptoms of the perfect Krishna consciousness is that one loses interest in all material activities. For a small boy to try to give up playing is impossible. But Prahlad Maharaj, being situated in first-class devotional service, was always absorbed in trance of Krishna consciousness, just as a materialistic person is always absorbed in thoughts of material gain. The Mahabhagavat, like Prahlad Maharaj, is always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. Nice purport.
We got to try to bring that planet into our life
in
so many ways.
Right.
You enjoying that pina colada thing there?
Yes.
Just nursing that thing.
Prahlad Maharaj was always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. Thus, being always embraced by the Lord, he did not know how his bodily necessities, such as sitting, walking, eating, lying down, drinking, and talking, were being automatically performed. So he's really off the spiritual deep end here.
Yeah, he was really in another level of consciousness where he was just entirely dependent and just free.
Should I purport this?
Well, you could. It's a quick one.
A small child, while being cared for by his mother, does not know how the needs of the body for eating, sleeping, lying down, passing water, and evacuating are being fulfilled. He is simply satisfied to be on the lap of his mother. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj was exactly like a small child being cared for by Govinda. That the necessary activities of his body were performed without his knowledge. As a father and mother care for the child, Govinda cared for Prahlad Maharaj, who remained always absorbed in thoughts of Govinda. This is Krishna consciousness. Prahlad Maharaj is the vivid example of perfect Krishna consciousness.
Wow. Okay.
Next verse. You know, Mara is not helping me, and I'm blaming
Mara,
her.
what is going on over there? You guys living your beach life over here.
I
Slipping.
need
Slipping.
I need a helper. I need you to help me. I know.
You also need to stop nursing that pina colada drink. It's ruining the flow. The timing is off.
These bugs have come out right now, and I'm scared they're going to land in my drink.
You're going to drink it fast.
Because of advancement in Krishna consciousness, he sometimes cried, sometimes laughed, sometimes expressed jubilation, and sometimes sang loudly. Sometimes, upon seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prahlad Maharaj would loudly call in full anxiety. He sometimes lost his shyness and jubilation and began dancing in ecstasy. And sometimes, being fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, he felt the oneness. And imitated the pastimes of the Lord.
Okay, let's discuss this just a bit. We're hearing about someone that's on an extremely high level of bhakti consciousness, Krishna consciousness, very high level of spiritual awareness. And these are involuntary symptoms that play out in him, right? Ecstasies. Now, Prabhupada writes this in the commentary regarding, it said he felt oneness. Prabhupada writes, these feelings of a devotee would not be appreciated by impersonalists. So impersonalists here means those whose faith is not that the absolute truth, the supreme, manifest in a personal form. Their idea is that in truth there is no form, that any conception of form, even of the gods or the goddesses or of Krishna, is illusion and has to ultimately be renounced to rise to the higher levels of awareness. So the feelings that Prahlad is having here, dancing in jubilation, feeling all these different deep emotions, Prabhupada is saying these feelings of a devotee would not be appreciated by impersonalists. One must go, now Prabhupada says this, one must go further and further into spiritual understanding. The first realization is impersonal Brahman. Okay, so that, and we can discuss what that means. But Prabhupada says, but one must still go further to realize Paramatma and eventually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So 3 levels of awareness. Lao Tzu is describing higher dimensions of consciousness. And sages like Vyas wrote that these are higher and higher stages of consciousness, of awareness of God, of the divine. So Prabhupada says one must go further and further. The first realization is impersonal Brahman, but one must go still further to realize Paramatma and eventually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is worshipped by the transcendental feelings of a devotee in a relationship of Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya. So, this is something, Raghunath, that I've been, how was that pina colada? You good?
It was like pina colada.
You managed to suck that thing
Take
down.
a walk in the rain
Okay.
and the smell of the ocean.
So
Midnight.
I thought maybe we could talk about very briefly these 3 different levels of awareness, or these 3 different levels of realization of the absolute, right?
Would you say if somebody says something like, to me, I don't believe in a God. I believe like the ocean is God. I believe like the sunset is God. I believe like the Grand Canyon is God. Can you say that's Brahman realization?
Well, it probably doesn't rise up to what would generally be categorized as Brahman realization, but it can be related to that.
Right. It's an impersonal way of saying the power of the material universe. It's a greater energy than me.
Yeah,
I
or
see it all
that.
as God.
Well, generally, the
And I'm
person
part
will
of
say,
it.
"I am that energy." I am the mountain, and I am the river, and because Sarva Kalvidam Brahma, everything is just Brahman. Everything is that one energy.
Probably that was the bait for a lot of us, because a lot of us got out of our Western Judeo-Christian background because we didn't like the relationship with God. God became sort of cruel, or God became an authoritarian figure. And when we heard this concept of, well, you are God. In the East, they talk about, mindfulness, and that we are all God, and then that there's not some God out there. And even though we don't necessarily believe that, we believe that God is out there, and we are also part of God.
In there.
But it was sort of, God. And it was sort of like a bait to sort of like bring us to higher forms of consciousness.
For a lot of people, for sure. And one could say that the thesis is that I'm completely different from God, and that would be like the Judeo-Christian thing, right? God is great, I'm small, that's it, that's final. And then the antithesis of that is like all is one. I am God, and everything is God. You know, the thesis
Right.
is nothing but God is God, and the antithesis of that, if you're not happy with that presentation, the antithesis of that is everything is God, or God is everywhere, or I am God too. You know, we are all God. Any distinction, any difference is illusion, and it must be rejected in order to rise to the level of truth.
I really think
And
we
then
got the
this,
good. I really think we got the good angle here.
the
I
synthesis,
yeah.
which
I got
is
into it. I got into it with my laundry guy yesterday because we're here in Goa. There are a lot of are like
a lot of impersonous laundry people.
my laundry person. So I was giving him a whole. I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Simon." I said, "Your name's Simon." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Really? My name's Raghunath." He's like, "Raghunath." And he's sort of like we were like he's like mad that I'm
Scoffing
a
at each
Hindu.
other.
Yeah, I'm mad. I was like, "What do you mean your name is Simon?" He said, "What does Raghunath mean?" I said, "Is Bhagawan." He's like, there's only one Bhagawan. I said, "I agree." He said, "Bhagavan's in your heart." I go, "Yeah, he's called in your heart. He's called Paramatma." He goes, "No, no, no." I said, "Yeah, Bhagawan in the heart is Paramatma." And he goes, "No, no, no. Hindus believe 33 million demigods." Yeah, demigod gods. And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, they're devas and devis, but there is one. There
They're
is
not
one
Bhagavan.
Devati Deva. There is one Devati Deva. That is
Yeah,
the Lord.
Raghunath taking
There's
him
one God."
down here. You should have got that
Yeah,
for your Instagram thing. I would have loved to have seen that posted.
I should have.
Okay.
It's like
So
Simon.
so in
Anyway.
any case, I was saying that there's the thesis, which is there's God is everything is separate and different and lesser than God. That's and that would be the Judeo-Christian idea. And then the antithesis of that is no, there is only God, and we are all that God, and that's all
Yeah,
there
you can
is.
see
It's
how
all
that
one.
must have drove Christians crazy,
I
right?
suppose. Yeah.
Must have drove them crazy.
But so what the bhakti yogis believe, and it's super well articulated by the followers of Sri Chaitanya, is that we are one and we're different. It's a synthesis, right? There's a oneness and there is a difference. You know, it's a
Mm.
bit more nuanced than that. It's not one or the other, and so try to understand that. So like, and this is something we've shared on the show before. If you're trying to explain your faith in bhakti to people that are new to it,
Mm.
and they ask, well, what do you believe about God? And you just start off on the Bhagavan level. I believe
Mm.
God is a blue cowherd boy that lifts his Govardhan hill, and that for the 99% of the people out there, that is just going to sound absurd and irrational and ridiculous, just like some really blind faith that you have.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say that, following these ancient teachings, coming down from these sacred texts, what they describe is God manifesting in three different ways. One is as the
As a little baby Krishna, then
no, not a little.
Krishna as a 5-year-old and as a
No,
toddler,
no, 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 no,
and
no.
then Krishna as a prince. There's three manifestations of God.
But Krishna
That's all.
as the one all-pervasive divine light that is the substratum of
Sure.
everything. And then there's the localized form of God that is present
Mm.
within the heart of every living being. And then there's actually the person God, actually that you could know God in a personal sense with form and so on, and have a personal relationship with. Just that is enough to make the average person say, oh, okay, this
Sure.
person, it isn't just some silly, ridiculous, so you can approach it that way. So let's just talk, I'll say briefly, because something about these three different levels of realization, starting with Brahman realization. So
Yeah.
Brahman realization starts, it's when one is starting to perceive that everything in material nature is temporary. And so they begin to seek that which is eternal. And through reflection on that, and through deep contemplation on that, and through meditation, and usually there'll be practices of renunciation, of letting go of the things of this world, one begins to perceive that their own eternality and how they are one with the eternal Brahman, the eternal substratum of all of this. And what they'll feel inside is like, I've abandoned my temporary identities, right? I'm not this man or this woman, or, you know, I am beyond all that. I am Brahman. I am part of that energy, and that I'm eternal, and I am eternal, like blissful consciousness. And there's nothing in this world for me to lament about or to desire, you know, because I am infinite, and in a sense, I'm one with the universe. I'm made of the energy of the universe. We call that Brahman realization, right? And it's said that is that's, you know, that we say ultimately the supreme, the divine God is Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. This is realization of the eternality, the eternal aspect of the divine. And then progressively, you know, as you move forward, as Prabhupada was saying, you have to go deeper, you have to move forward. One begins to recognize that there's an order in this world that we're living in. And it has to be designed, it has to be controlled by a conscious being who's overseeing everything and keeping the order. And this is the chit level, right? The knowledge level. So on this level of realization, you know, and it's talking about that Paramatma within the heart of every living being. One feels within my own heart, I'm in constant contact with this, and I'm in contact with, and you can say, I'm under the shelter of, right? This transcendent, all-pervading Parabrahman, this higher personal manifestation of eternal, blissful energy, and that this supreme conscious being, this soul of the entire universe, who exists outside and inside of everything, and who oversees and controls all of the material energy, is a dear friend of every living being, and I've got him right here in my heart, and I exist in his network of material energy, which he's pervading with his consciousness and controlling and organizing and maintaining. So I live in his, you know, in his expansive network. Right?
Yeah. If it was social media, you'd say he follows you. He friended you.
He friended you, but he's also the one running the Instagram and all that stuff. So
I got unfriended by Lord Vishnu.
He's the witness. He's the permitter. He's the one that allows you to have your own page. He's all of that. Yeah, yeah. It's, in a sense, that's an interesting way to look at it, right? That there is a master, you know, behind a webmaster. Yes. There's a master behind it all. And so then Bhagavan, you know, that's when still the highest level of evolution, where, you know, beyond both Brahman and Paramatma, or you could say including Brahman and Paramatma, and then evolving still further. When one hears about this part of Brahman, and they realize that this part of Brahman has its own bliss, you know, that it derives through its own activities and its own, you know, loving adventures of supreme bliss, you know, and that you only get by hearing, you know, and you only realize by hearing from someone who's realized it. Then what's you're feeling inside now is, I am Krishna's. Well, Prabhupada wrote about it in the commentary here, right? He said,
don't you get it? No, don't you also get it by all the 9 stages of bhakti? And there's an example, an exemplar for each one.
No doubt. But even all of that is, your attraction to that is coming through some person, right? That's sharing
some
with you.
Mahabhagavat.
Yeah, some great devotee. And but Prabhupada, he said, I want to go to the end of what I read there. He said one must still go further to realize Paramatma and eventually the supreme personality of Godhead, which means Bhagavan, who is worshipped by the transcendental feelings of a devotee in a relationship of Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya. So what does one feel? We mentioned with Brahman realizations, one's feeling, I'm eternal, I'm blissful, I'm infinite, I'm one with the universe. And in Paramatma, they're experiencing these ideas of I'm connected. I have in my heart, within me, and without me, the presence of this divine being, this dearmost friend who's controlling everything. On that Bhagavan realization, the inner feeling is I am, and this relates to the words that Prabhupada was using here. Shanta is like, these are 5 different varieties of love that one can have for God. Shanta means like there's no service. It's more like an appreciative love. You know, it's an inactive love. Dasya means I love you like a servant, like you're my superior, right? Sometimes people love their teacher, you know, or let's say their guru or something like that. You know,
They
someone
look
that
up to them in such a deep way, like Hanuman
Yeah.
to Ram.
Yeah,
But
and I want to please you. I want to serve you. That's with that kind of love. And Sakya means intimate friendship.
Friendship,
where
buddies,
no one's
buddy love.
buddy love. It's not my superior that I love, but it's like my equal that I love. And Vatsalya is more like a protective parental love, right? Like actually the object of my love, God in this case, actually needs me, you know, to care for them.
That's a very interesting twist, huh?
Yes. Yeah. It's an interesting theology, right?
Interesting theology. God is my baby. Come
God is
on.
my little baby.
Can't make that up.
But they would say, you know, they would say that the love in this world that we see is a reflection of that love. So it makes, from that perspective, it makes, it's not
as
like
a parent,
so
there's like intense
love.
amounts love. Yeah. And that love, you know, also contains things like fear fear and anxiety or worry, or what are some other interesting ones? Horror.
You tell me, you're the parent. Horror. Another like a little horror mixed in. But the horror increases the depth of the love. Like in a moment where the child is in great danger, it's the love spikes, you know.
Sure. Like the mother, get out of the road. That's love.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Horror.
So
maybe horror's not one of the parental ones.
And then the final one was Madhurya, which is the romantic love. God is my lover, you know, and all the intense emotions and feelings and expressions that are involved in that most intimate type of love. So what is going on in the heart of the Bhagavan realized devotee? It's Krishna is my dearest friend, or Krishna is, you know, I am Krishna's loving guardian, or I am Krishna's lover. I'm Krishna's romantic lover. And you know, I was reading a little something from the spiritual scientist on this, and he said most people, when they think of God, they think, what can God do for me? You know,
I like this.
But they don't think about what does God do for himself, for his own enjoyment and his own pleasure. And that we can understand when we look into the pastimes of Krishna in the 10th canto. That's where you'll get your fullest, you know, description of
and that's how you fall in love with
truth.
Krishna too.
Yeah, that's right.
You just hear those pastimes. We really are part of something
very special.
It really works, and it's really whoever came up with this, it was very well thought out. Very well thought out. Whoever's the mastermind behind our religion.
Dave, I appreciate your presentation.
I give it a 5-star, 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. They really thought it through. There's something for everybody here.
Yeah.
All right. Guess what? It's 7:27.
All right. Mara's got something for us.
Mara, you got something.
Is Mara still with us,
Mara?
or is she just like completely, you know, pina colada intoxicated?
I didn't have any pina coladas. Only Raga did.
Only I did.
Okay. What did you have? Just the watermelon?
Watermelon juice, yeah.
Watermelon juice.
And I've been knitting per usual.
All right.
Incorporate higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness.
Incorporate.
Because Bhagavatam is valid, it's passed the test of time.
That's right.
The plan have a poll.
Well, not the other way, but that way. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
How did I say? Yeah.
You said instead of that it's
passed the test of time because it's valid. That's what I said. Yeah.
The planets have a pull. Add Krishna graha.
Pulling.
Pull in Krishna planet.
Questioning material success, the dawn of our spiritual life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We must go further and further in our spiritual realization.
Keep going.
Move forward from Brahman realization. Go deeper and take shelter.
Okay.
Shelter.
Shh.
I've had enough. Wait, I was going to sing some shelter lyrics here.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm all tied up and my eyes are shut, and the chains I made there tough to cut. By me, I need someone who's free from birth, death, suffering, and worldly misery. Inattentive, insensitive for what others have found, letting false ego drag me around. I'm confessing, I'm missing all I could learn. I'm not humbling, I'm crumbling, and now I'm concerned. I need your shelter. I need your shelter. I need your shelter.
That's the one that had the big bouncy riff on that one, right?
Shelter. I've had enough. I'll never fulfill these desires. I need something higher. Please extend your hand and save me from this fire.
Fire. Yeah, okay.
It's a good one. And
Shed like Gus.
That's there you go. You got to shed like Gus.
Shawnee says shed. That's a great t-shirt. Shawnee says shed.
Shawnee shed. That's a good
Shawnee
tongue
says
twister.
shed. Shawnee said shed. Shawnee says shed. Shawnee says shed. Shawnee says shed. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're back tomorrow at this time. And
No show Saturday this week, right? I guess it's a
no
little
show
early.
Saturday. We're traveling, but yeah, it's a little early. Q&A on Sunday. Send your messages into Mary.
You got to
your
grab some of these
cues.
people walking around there. Just bring them onto the show right now. These...
Come here. What are you doing with your life? How about
Yeah,
that?
'cause-
Something like that. What the hell are you doing? Think there's anything high? Oh, we met a nice girl who bicycled here from Poland. That was pretty interesting.
Wow.
You got to get that guy who walked there. Why don't you get that guy? Hridoy Chaitanya, I think his name is. Shivaji knows him. Who walked to India from France.
All right.